Hello. If you're watching this, you are part of one of the families that was selected to adopt one of the puppies that my husband and I have been fostering since they were born. So, congratulations on that. I know you guys are really excited, and it's an exciting time, and so I'm happy for you, and thank you so much for going through a rescue to find your puppy. If everybody did that, there wouldn't be so many dogs dying in shelters, so thank you for that. I really appreciate it, and I hope you guys have a good experience. I wanted to put this video together. There's a lot of you that have been asking some really good questions about house training, food, veterinary care, all that good stuff, and I just wanted to make sure I said the same things to everybody and didn't miss anything, and so I decided this might be a good way to do it. So this is going to be a series of little video clips of me talking, kind of showing you guys some things, and hopefully it's helpful. I know that there's a lot of you that have already had a lot of dog experience, so a lot of these things won't be new to you at all. Hi, Helen. So feel free to ask questions in person if you think of any, and thank you for taking the time to watch this. I think it'll be good, and if you guys learned something, that's great. Otherwise, it'll at least make me feel better that I talked about these things before these puppies left our care. So thank you so much. Okay, so I'd like to talk to you guys a little bit about house training your puppy, because that's going to be one of the first projects that you guys work on when you take them home. So with us, the puppies have been going outside more and more frequently, the bigger that they've gotten. So they go out several times a day at this point, and they're starting to catch on to the fact that that's where they need to go. A lot of them will cry from in the bathroom or the kennel, wherever we have them, to let us know they need to go out. So they're starting to catch a clue in terms of those things, but they're by no means going to be completely house trained when they come to you guys. You're going to have a lot of work to do once you get them one-on-one and you're able to work with them. So I just wanted to give you guys some pointers on that will hopefully help. Number one, your puppy's going to need to go outside very frequently. So every time your puppy eats, every time they wake up from a long nap, take a big drink of water, all those are good times to take them outside. And also, your puppy's probably not going to be able to make it through the night, at least in the beginning of you having them, so you may need to take them out in the middle of the night as well. So try to keep those things in mind. I am a fan of kennel training dogs. I think it's helpful. So, number one, I think if you have a crate for your puppy, it's helpful in that your puppy has a safe place that they can go where they are not going to get into anything and destroy your house. That's important. And also, most puppies don't like to go potty in an area that they kind of sleep in or spend time in. So if you get a crate that's an appropriate size for your puppy, so not too big, it really helps with house training in those situations. Obviously, if it's too big, your puppy can just walk over to the corner of their crate, and a lot of times they won't feel bad about going potty in that area. So that's my take on crates. I don't think it necessarily matters what type of crate you get, as long as it's a correct size for your puppy. And unfortunately, that might mean getting a smaller one to start with, and then you may need to upgrade as your puppy grows. So just keep that in mind. I like the ones that are the black wire ones from like Petco or Amazon. You can get them all over the place. They have a plastic bottom in them, and your puppy can see out of all sides, and it's good ventilation and all that. But again, I don't think it matters so much what kind of crate you get for your puppy. But I do think crate training is important. A lot of people don't like to put their animal in a cage, and I get that. But when you're teaching things like house training and not to chew on inappropriate things, crates can be really helpful. Just don't leave them in there for prolonged periods of time. So, next thing with the house training, you guys are going to need to expect some accidents to happen until your puppy really figures it out. So, if your puppy is like right in front of you and you're catching them in the act of squatting on the floor and peeing or pooping, it's pick your puppy up, tell them no sternly, and then I would take them right outside. So they start to understand that that's not a good thing to do and that outside is the appropriate place to go. So that's one scenario. The other scenario is you just find a wreck on your floor and your puppy's is not near that wreck anymore. You didn't catch them in the act of doing it. In those situations, I know a lot of people talk about getting their dog and taking them over and rubbing their nose in it and just getting kind of upset at them over that, and I don't like that. I think there's enough research and behaviorists that have shown that all that really does is damage your relationship with your puppy, and it's really not, they don't associate the reason why you're mad at them in those cases, so you really have to catch them in the act of doing it for it to matter, for the correction to matter at that time. So if you find that wreck and you didn't see your puppy do it, just clean it up, figure out if you need to be taking them outside more frequently, what you missed maybe, those kind of things, and just work through it. And you guys, if you're really consistent about this in the beginning of having your puppy, the first few weeks, you're going to be so happy that you were, because they do pick up on it quickly. They're smart, We want to use positive reinforcement and not punishment with them, but they will listen to you. So just be really consistent in the beginning, work really hard on it, and I know you guys can be successful. I want to mention too that when you are cleaning up messes in your house, particularly urine, just know that a lot of times your puppy can smell that urine being in that location long after you think you've cleaned it, because a lot of the products that are being sold don't have the enzymes in it to really break down that urine well. So even if you think it's clean, your puppy may not, and your puppy may think that's a good place to go potty because they still smell that urine there. So I would use an enzymatic cleaner in those areas, something like Urine Off or Nature's Miracle. There's other products too, but just pick one that's good, that has the enzymes in it to really get rid of that urine smell. And I guess the last thing I wanted to mention with the house training, a lot of people like to use puppy pads. In general, I don't really like them, just because I think it teaches your puppy that in some places, in some instances, it's acceptable to go potty in the house. And I know there's people that have used them before and have been successful, but in general, I don't think it's as effective. It's just hitting it really hard from the beginning and not using those. I think it's like if you had a human child and you were teaching them it's okay to pee in the bathtub sometimes, and then suddenly you were like, no, that's not okay. So that's my 2 cents on that. There are people that have been successful with puppy pads, but I don't use them. So stay tuned. I think I'm going to talk about diet next. So this is my dog Helen. Apparently she's obsessed with this video making process, so you're probably going to see her popping in and out here. So I wanted to talk to you about what to feed your puppy in diets. You guys have asked a lot of good questions about that. So just so you guys know, when your puppy is going home with you, your puppy will have been weaned onto a food called Science Diet Large Breed Puppy. And I have a bag of it here I wanted to show you guys. So, it's a really big bag, sorry. So this is what they're being weaned onto, and I'm going to send some of that with them when they go to you guys. Science Diet is a good food. In general, just to kind of talk about foods a little bit, there's so many brands out there, and it can be really overwhelming to people trying to figure out what to feed their dog, and I get that. There's so many mixed messages, so many things to choose from. So, as a veterinary student at CSU, and somebody who's been around dogs my whole life, I tend to trust diets that are backed by science. So, foods that have gone through feeding trials, that have veterinary nutritionists that work for them. There's those kind of things that I look for in a brand, because you want to make sure that it's been tested with dogs to show how it affects them. You want to show that it's digestible, right? Because a lot of foods, you can throw whatever ingredient in there that you want, and it may not be biologically available to your dog, right? So I like the science behind it. I like to know that they've been tested and researched. There's literally no regulation, or basically no regulation out there. Anybody can make a food company, so anybody can slap some ingredients together, put it in a bag, and market the heck out of it and tell you guys it's the best diet ever, and there's really nothing to stop them from doing that. So please just be really cautious when you're going to food stores and you're listening to people recommend things to you. Just kind of take it with a grain of salt in a lot of those situations, and just really think through it. Try to pick a food that's backed by science. So I like Science Diet. If you want to feed your puppy that its whole life, that's definitely not a bad choice at all. Some other good brands are Purina Pro Plan, Royal Canin, Eukanuba. There's others too, but those are the ones I'm most familiar with. So ones that I would trust to feed my own dog. My own dogs are on Science Diet or Purina Pro Plan. With your puppy, you want to make sure that they are being fed a large breed puppy formula. So whatever brand you pick, try to find the large breed version. And then once they're about a year of age, you can switch to an adult food. And then they make senior diets as well for when your dog's a lot older. So that's kind of how that works. In terms of how to feed your puppy, I do have a couple of thoughts on that. Right now, your puppy's being fed a couple of large meals twice a day, and then we feed them a little bit a couple other times a day too, just a few dog kernels to try to help with the weaning process. When you guys take them home, I would probably feed them 3 times a day, split their food over 3 times a day, and then you can eventually just get them on a twice a day feeding schedule. So the other thing I wanted to talk to you guys about is meal feeding versus free feeding your dog. So free feeding is just when you have a bowl and you just keep it full of food and your puppy comes and goes from it when they want to, all of that. It's a nice theory, but I can say that in general, I don't like it. There's some dogs that do great with it, but in general, most dogs at some point in their lives tend to get overweight when they are fed that way. So, and especially with these puppies, I think they're all relatively food motivated, and I would question their ability to regulate themselves. So just keep that in mind. I do like meal feeding, so you know exactly how much your dog's getting, and you can adjust that as you need to. The bags of food that you'll find have like a starting guide on the side about how much to feed your dog. And so you just start with that, and then you figure that out as they're growing, how much more you need to feed them or less. Keep in mind that every dog's different, and every dog's metabolism is different, and it's going to change throughout their lives. So, for instance, after they get spayed and neutered, their metabolism is going to slow down. So, you really can't just go off a set amount of food for the entirety of your dog's life. You're going to have to adjust it, and if your dog's getting a little bit heavy, you're going to have to just back off a little bit. If they're getting a little bit too thin, you'll want to increase the amount. So it's kind of an adjustment game with that. I do want to mention that a large population of dogs in this country are overweight. And there's a variety of reasons for that. Number one, people like to feed their dogs. It makes their dogs happy to eat. Another thing is that a lot of people just don't know that their dog's overweight, and a lot of times I would encourage you guys to look online. If you just Google Purina body condition score, you'll find all kinds of images about how we classify dogs with their body conditions and help determine whether or not they're overweight or not. So as your dog gets older and they're more mature, and you can really kind of look at that scorecard and see where your dog's at on there, you can make adjustments to food as you need to. And of course your veterinarian can help you with that as well. But just want to encourage you to think about food, think about how much you're feeding your dog. It's not too surprising, but there have been some really good studies that have shown that dogs that are kept at an ideal body weight live considerably longer than dogs that are overweight. almost 2 years, I think, in one study, what the average was. That's huge, guys, when you think of the lifespan of a dog. So try to keep them at an ideal weight, and you will do great with that. Thanks. Let me know if you have any questions about food. Okay, so I wanted to chat with you guys a little bit about brushing your puppy's teeth. Some of you are going to think that's crazy, but I wanted to talk about that. One of the biggest problems we see in veterinary medicine is dogs with dental problems, mostly because people don't brush their teeth. So dogs are very similar to us in that they eat food and they get plaque on their teeth, but unlike us, a lot of times that plaque is not brushed off. And so eventually that can just calcify and it forms tartar. It's like this dark brown nasty stuff on their teeth, and the only way to really get that off is under anesthesia and having a professional dental cleaning done by your veterinarian, which your dog may need at some point in its life, and that's okay. But I want to talk to you about brushing your dog's teeth, because if you do that consistently and you prevent that plaque from forming tartar and your dog getting periodontal disease and all kinds of problems with their teeth because of that gunk on there, you can really save yourself a lot of money in terms of dental cleanings, and it just really helps your dog's oral health, guys. So I'd encourage you to consider it. I recognize that all your puppies are going to be losing all their baby teeth anyway and getting new teeth coming in, and that's fine, but it's easier to teach them how to brush teeth when they're little and to work on it when they're small. So, couple things to know about brushing your dog's teeth. You can't use human toothpaste, okay? That can be toxic. You need a non-mint, kind of non-fluoride toothpaste. It can be mint flavored, but, oh sorry, that's upside down. So here's one of the brands that works well. It's a CET brand dental toothpaste for dogs. You can use it for cats as well, so that's a good choice. And then I'm going to show you kind of how we do it. I brush all of my dog's teeth, okay, because I'm crazy. I realize that. But, so this is my dog Jaya. When you're teaching your puppy how to do it, you just want to offer it up to them. Let them kind of sniff it and lick it, see what they think, and just take baby steps with it. Eventually you want to get to the point where you can brush all your dog's teeth. Oh, Jaya, get in the camera. Let's try to get in the camera. There we go. And you just want to do the outsides of your dog's teeth, okay? And get all the way back, all the way back to those rear molars back there. Just really brush. So you can see that a dog's teeth extend all the way back there. And you want to brush the outsides of those teeth really well. So just kind of getting your puppy used to that in the beginning. Most of the time they like the flavor of the toothpaste. It's just the toothbrush and kind of you grabbing their head and whatever that's scary. So just take baby steps with it and try to teach them when they're little that that's okay, and you can really do a lot in terms of your dog's health, in terms of their teeth. So that's my 2 cents on that. Some people don't brush their dog's teeth and they just get them anesthetized dental cleanings when they need them. But you can definitely avoid a lot of those if you do brush your dog's teeth. But you need to do it at least 3 times a week for it to be effective, because that plaque can calcify in a pretty short amount of time. So those are my tips on the toothbrushing. So I wanted to chat with you guys about veterinary care also. A lot of you guys have been asking some really good questions. So first of all, I think it's really important that you guys find a good vet in your area that you're comfortable with, one that explains to you what they're doing and is nice and friendly and likes your puppy, and feel free to ask for a hospital tour so you can go around and see that veterinary hospital, see what's going on there, check out their client service, how they do things. Just try to find a vet that you're comfortable with from the beginning. So if anything happens to your puppy and they need to go in for whatever reason, you already have somebody that you trust that you can go to. In terms of preventive care in dogs, so that's basically things that we do to try to prevent diseases in dogs, and there's a lot of good things we can do. There's some things I want to tell you about. A lot of these things you're going to hear about again with your vet, or you may already know about them, But I want to make sure that all of you have at least heard it once before you actually have to go through all this with your puppy. So, vaccines are super important for your dog. It's one of the best ways we have to prevent diseases. And there's 4 main vaccines that are typically recommended for dogs that I want to chat with you about. So one is the rabies vaccine. Super important. Rabies is a terrible disease. You guys have all heard about it. It's fatal. If you get rabies, you're going to die. There's been very few cases where that's not been the case. So please just vaccinate your dog for rabies. It's actually required by law that dogs are vaccinated for it, so just a good idea to keep your dog up to date on that. If your rabies vaccine were to expire on your dog and your dog bit somebody or bit another animal, it can get really difficult for you to try to work through that in the process, that whole process. So I would just avoid that. Keep your dog current on their rabies vaccine. Your puppy has not been vaccinated for rabies yet because they need to be about 16 weeks of age before they can receive that vaccine, so about 4 months old. The first vaccine for rabies that they ever get is good for 1 year, and then after that, it's typically good for every 3 years for the rest of your dog's life. So that's about how frequently you would need to vaccinate for that. Those of you that are in Wyoming, depending on where you're at, they may require rabies vaccines every 2 years, just depending on the regulations in that area. So, that's the rabies vaccine. The next vaccine I want to mention is a combination vaccine. It actually has 5 different diseases in it that we're vaccinating against typically. You've probably heard of it as the distemper parvo vaccine. Super important. I would make sure that vaccine gets done on your puppy. That's actually the one that your puppies have already received when they were 6 weeks old. They got their first distemper parvo combination vaccine. So the thing with puppies is they need a whole series of that vaccination to be protected. So 1 to 2 weeks after you take your puppy home, would get that vaccine again, and then 3 to 4 weeks after that, would do that vaccine a 3rd time, and then your vet can help you with getting them on an adult schedule for that vaccine, so they'll need it less frequently after that. But that's a super important vaccine. I want to talk to you guys about parvovirus really quickly in particular, because that's one of the things we vaccinate against with that vaccine. Parvo is a virus that causes vomiting and diarrhea in puppies. It makes them really sick. They can get really dehydrated. Many times it's fatal if it's not treated by a veterinarian. And it just makes them really sad and really sick. Okay, and when they do get treated by a vet, I mean, you have to take them in if you want them to try to survive it. We can't cure parvo, but we give them supportive care. So it's aggressive hospitalization with IV fluids and various medications, and it's just better to avoid it. But I will say the rescue several months ago pulled several puppies off of a euthanasia list in New Mexico that were very sick when they came to us, and many of them had parvo. And despite everything we did, we threw everything at them. We lost 4 of those puppies. They still died. So parvo is a bad disease. And I'm sorry, but you're an idiot if you don't vaccinate your dog for parvo. So please just get those vaccines for your puppy. To make sure that they're protective. It's a really effective vaccine, but you got to make sure your puppy gets the puppy series. So there's that. The 3rd vaccine I want to mention to you guys is called Bordetella. The layman's term is like the kennel cough vaccine. So Bordetella is like an upper respiratory disease that dogs can get. They get it from other dogs. They get it from respiratory secretions that other dogs leave around places. Not a super severe disease typically. Some dogs it can progress to pneumonia and be more serious, but usually it's not a super severe disease, but the vaccine is good to do. I vaccinate my dogs for it. It's kind of like the flu vaccine in people. It may lessen their severity of signs if they were to get kennel cough, and it may prevent them from getting it as well. But just like the flu vaccine in people, there's lots of different strains of Bordetella, and so the vaccine uses the most common strains. So that's Bordetella. You typically would do that At your next puppy visit, you would vaccinate for it and booster it one more time and then get them on the adult schedule, which is typically a yearly vaccine. So that's the third one. The fourth vaccine is leptospirosis. It's a mouthful. Lepto for short. It is a bacterial disease that wild animals spread. So, deer, we think raccoons and squirrels and various other kinds of wild animals can spread it, typically through their urine, but basically it used to be more of a rural disease, so people's hunting dogs that could be picking it up. It's becoming more urban, so dogs that we don't necessarily think would be susceptible to lepto are coming down with it, and we're just thinking there's more wild animals coming into contact with people's backyards, like the squirrels, raccoons, whatever. So we're seeing it more frequently. It's still not a super common disease, but when dogs get it, it can be very severe, and they can actually go into kidney failure. So it's a good vaccine to do. There's a bunch of strains for that one as well, and we include the most common strains in that vaccine. Your puppy would get that typically at your next puppy visit, boosted one more time, and then it would be a yearly vaccine after that. But it is one I would really consider doing. So those are the 4 vaccines that dogs typically get. The next thing I want to mention preventive care-wise is heartworm disease. So heartworm is a parasite that basically mosquitoes transmit the little tiny baby heartworms to dogs. They bite your dog, and if the mosquito has that, gives it to your dog, it goes in your bloodstream, and then over time those little baby worms mature in your dog's heart and pulmonary system, and they grow, and it can be really, really serious, guys. It's not something you want to mess around with. It's one of those things that's far easier to prevent than it is to treat for. The rescue has done a lot of, we've taken in a lot of heartworm positive dogs out of shelters, and it's just really sad to watch them go through that treatment process. So much better to prevent it from happening, and how you do that is typically with a monthly pill that you give your dog. So this is HeartGuard. This is one example of heartworm prevention. There's many different types. So your veterinarian will have whatever one they carry is most accessible to you. That's what I would use, but this is one kind. I'm going to send you guys with a HeartGuard tablet to give your puppy on July 1st or so, and then you want to just get them on a monthly preventive of heartworm prevention after that. So, and it does matter what the weight of your dog is, so once your dog tops 25 pounds for this particular kind, you need the next weight class and all of that. So while your puppy's growing, your vet may not want to give you too many tablets just because your puppy might outgrow them. But once your dog reaches an adult weight and you know where it's kind of staying, you can buy more of it at a time. But that's heartworm prevention. I think it's important. Heartworm's not super common in Colorado and Wyoming by any means, but there are heartworm positive dogs around here, and there are mosquitoes, and so your dog is at risk of getting it. Like I said, it's easier to prevent than it is to have your dog go through the treatment for heartworm once they have it. So yeah, that's heartworm disease. Kind of lost my train of thought there. Thought is back now. Just wanted to mention too, with that heartworm prevention, that another benefit of it is it also deworms against some of the common intestinal parasites that dogs can get. So some people give it just during the summer months when there's mosquitoes around for the heartworm prevention, but I give it to my dogs year-round because it just makes me feel better, and because it also deworms for those intestinal parasites. Also, your puppy should be tested for heartworm when they're about 7 to 8 months of age or so, and then get on an adult yearly testing schedule from that point, just to make sure the heartworm prevention is working. If your dog has heartworm disease, you want to get it treated, all those kind of things. So make sure you're doing regular testing for your dog too. It's just a quick blood test. So that's heartworm disease. The next thing I wanted to mention is that until your puppy's fully vaccinated and protected, you really don't want to be taking them to places that puts them at risk for a lot of these diseases. So dog parks, Petco, PetSmart, those kind of places, I would not be taking my puppy to until they are more protected with their vaccines. That being said, I think socialization is really important when these guys are little. You just want to be able to kind of control the environment in which you're doing that in. So I think overall it's fine to have, people come over that you know, or dogs that you know are well cared for, well vaccinated, clean dogs, that just weren't rolling around at the dog park before they came around to your house. I think it's good to introduce your puppy to other animals. We just want to make sure it's safe to do that. I take my dogs to dog parks all the time. I think it's great, but you want to make sure they're protected with their vaccines before doing so. Okay, so spaying and neutering. That's another really important thing I wanted to talk to you guys about. You guys have had some really good questions. So obviously, we spay and neuter dogs as a population control measure. Super important, especially with these guys. I know these puppies are beautiful and they would make really cute babies, but we don't want that because this country already has a pet overpopulation problem. In fact, just a couple weeks ago, one of the shelters that we pull dogs from sometimes in Georgia, they actually euthanized 64 dogs in a single day, most of which were pit bull mixes. So I just want you guys to keep that in mind. Please just don't, just get your puppy spayed and neutered. It's included in your contract. It has to be done anyway through the rescue. So let's just make sure that it happens and we don't contribute to the pet overpopulation problem. Some shelters and rescue groups are spaying and neutering puppies as early as 8 weeks of age. And from a population control standpoint, that makes total sense. Our rescue is run by mostly veterinary students, and so we tend to not be quite that extreme with it. We do know that the time to spay and neuter is controversial. I wish I could give you guys this, the perfect time, the perfect age to have it done and for it to be simple like that, but unfortunately it's not. So we learn in school that obviously when you spay a puppy, you're taking away her ovaries, which is the primary source of estrogen for her. For the male puppy, you're taking away their testicles, which is a major source of testosterone. And those hormones are super important for bone growth and growth plate development, those kind of things. Dogs still grow when they're neutered really young, but they do grow a little bit differently in the way their skeletal structure matures, and just kind of how it all turns out is a little bit different when they are spayed or neutered that young. And so, especially with large breeds, I tend to think it's better to hold off for a little while to get them spayed or neutered until their skeletal system's a little bit more mature. So, I think in their contract we're putting something like they need to be spayed or neutered by 8 months of age. So, keep that in mind. But we're willing to negotiate that with you guys if there's something that's come up or something you're worried about. So, I want to kind of explain the health benefits to spaying and neutering too, because there are many. For male dogs, you're removing their testicles, so the chance of testicular cancer is basically non-existent. Their risks of having prostate problems goes down significantly. If you neuter a male puppy earlier rather than later, a lot of times you avoid a lot of those male behaviors, such as lifting their leg and marking their territory. Sometimes male-related aggression, type dominance things can be decreased when you neuter them sooner. So those are some definite benefits as well. With females, when you spay them before their first heat cycle, you greatly reduce the risk of them getting mammary tumors as they get older. So that's something to keep in mind. And also, female dogs that are not spayed are at a pretty high risk for developing a uterine infection, which can be a medical emergency in certain instances. So those are things I just want you guys to think about. There are reasons we spay and neuter besides just their population control standpoints. So, that's the spaying and neutering thing. As I've mentioned, I think to most of you guys, their adoption fee does cover their spay or neuter through us. If you guys want to use us, it would be at one of the hospitals we use. We have one in Fort Collins that we work with, and we have one in my hometown in Casper, Wyoming that we work with as well. So it could be done through the rescue. Just let me know if you guys want that option. If you guys have it done through a veterinarian that you choose, that's totally fine. We will refund $50 of your adoption fee once we have proof of that. So different options for how you guys want to get that done, but please make sure that you do. And we do also have 2 brother-sister pairs going to families. Obviously we don't want any issues there with incest, because that's gross. And, you know, if you guys are realizing, like, oh, your puppy is having this kind of behavior, and you think maybe getting them fixed sooner will help with that, you know, all those things are valid things to think about. And so just see how your dog's doing as they're getting a little bit older. If it were me, just off the top of my head, I think 5 to 6 months of age is probably a good time. But if you want to wait a little bit longer or go a little bit sooner, for whatever reason, I think it's valid to think about that. And kind of in this last video clip, I just wanted to chat with you guys about training your puppy from the very beginning, taking them home. So your puppy's going to want to chew on everything around your house, and you, especially while they're losing their baby teeth. So making sure you have enough things around they can chew on that's appropriate. So like Nylabones are good for puppies, getting them lots of toys, lots of good things like that. That's excellent. And again, the kennel training is going to help with this too. But anytime you guys see them chewing on something they shouldn't be, it's really important to redirect their attention and give them a toy that they can chew on. So make sure you guys are doing that. And even if it's cute when they're little, we don't want them to be taught that it's okay to chew on people's hands or all of those kind of things. Because when they get bigger, it can be a real problem. And they're not going to know a difference between you or some 2-year-old kid that comes along. So that's super important. And just make sure you're doing things from the beginning, like taking them on car rides, teaching them how to walk on a leash. You know, bath time's super important. From the time they were little, I've been messing with them, you know, their ears and trimming their nails and doing all of that. But continue with that. Try to desensitize them to being messed with in all those areas so that later, as they need to be handled in their lives, it's easier on them and they're not afraid of it. So make sure you're doing those kind of things. I think puppy classes are excellent. Again, make sure your puppy's well protected and vaccinated before you expose them to the cooties of puppy class. But it really provides a good way to socialize them, and they can teach you some ways to work with your puppy and train them. I believe in positive reinforcement, so use treats. There's clicker training too, so you get a clicker like this. There's some really good videos on YouTube about clicker training if you want to check that out. But these puppies are smart, and their breed is one that is historically very eager to please. They're human, so you guys should have a lot of success when you're training your puppy. And I encourage you guys to work on that from the very beginning. I think you're going to have a lot of fun with it. And I think that's mostly all I wanted to chat with you guys about. There's so many more things, but I tried to pick the most important that I thought would fit into this long video clip. So hopefully I did that for you. And again, thank you so much for adopting. I'm so glad you guys went through a rescue. I hope you encourage your family and friends to do the same, because we can really make a big impact if everybody did that. And I hope that these puppies are out there and they change a lot of people's minds about pit bulls and show them that they can be wonderful dogs, because they can. And I hope they are ambassadors of the breed and that you guys really enjoy having them in their families. I will always be here. If you guys have questions, I don't care if it's tomorrow or 10 years down the road, I will always be here. So you guys can contact me if you need anything at all. And of course, I love updates on the puppies. It totally makes my day when people do that. Even dogs that I fostered years ago, I still love hearing about them. So feel free to shoot me a text or a video, or any of that, and I'm happy to help you guys. Thank you so much, and you will be getting your puppy in about a week, so that's amazing.